The Evil Within 2 is a frustrating experience. It's a game that I've always enjoyed and have put well over 100 hours into. However, I've also had a difficult time defending it, because while the game succeeds at innovating certain elements of the survival horror formula, it also heavily drags down the player's experience with questionable design choices. And even though I was never a fan of the original, I can still acknowledge that the devs had a lot of care for the story and characters. It's a shame that after 8 years, we still haven't gotten anything new from the survival horror franchise. As much as I want to love this game, it is understandable why a sequel has yet to come to fruition. So, to properly dissect the prominent issues with this title, we will dive deep into its gameplay philosophy. This is why The Evil Within 2 is almost great. Before I can make you guys understand why this game isn't as good as it could have been, I have to explain what works here. The highlight of the game for me personally was the open world. At first glance, this might seem very out of place for a game like this. There aren't many survival horror games in the market that attempt at making fully explorable maps. And it makes sense, because how do you implement a progression system that incentivizes players to explore your horror game map of all things, right? However, what The Evil Within 2 does with this change is actually brilliant. Instead of having the game lead you through a linear horror experience, it is now up to you to make decisions on how you're going to overcome obstacles. Your first visit into the open world is filled to the brim with side quests and resources to collect. And the map isn't all that big to begin with, so for every corner you check, chances are there's something interesting to be found. This includes new weapons, pouches for your different types of ammo, and creepy side quests that explore Sebastian's trauma. There are also enemies everywhere, so you can't simply run past everything or else you'll get cornered. You must really take your time and pick your battles wisely, since Sebastian's is quite underleveled at the start. He can't run for a prolonged time as his stamina is exceptionally low, and on Nightmare difficulty, he dies fast. I was reminded of that fact quite early into my playthrough. Sebastian's weaknesses are what drives the player to engage in combat, as enemies drop green gel upon death. This curious fluid can be used to upgrade Sebastian's attributes and unlock new skills. There are the obvious upgrades such as the upscaling of Sebastian's health and stamina, but there's also another skill tree that the game encourages you to invest in, that being your stealth stats. Stealth is an essential part of the gameplay loop, as I'm almost positive there isn't enough ammo to kill everything. So the next best thing to spending your precious resources is sneaking up behind every enemy for a guaranteed kill. Almost every enemy, as some enemies like the Hysteric and the Lament require 2 stealth attacks to kill. This is something you're going to do a lot, and I mean a lot. Thankfully, Sebastian's way of handling it is super satisfying. I never get enough of the power he puts in every thrust of his knife. It is brutal and I love it. The more you upgrade Sebastian's stealth, the harder he will be to spot by other enemies, and the faster he will move while crouching. On top of that, he will learn to kill enemies from around corners, and he will learn to do a sprint version of the normal stealth kill. By pressing the cover button while focusing on the enemy, Sebastian will perform a quickly recoverable stealth attack. This move is extremely powerful as it allows you to cover great distance between you and the enemy while being stealthy. And once again, doing this to almost every mob never got old. Another aspect of stealth that I think is worth mentioning is how easy it is to abuse the enemy's AI. Let's say you stab a Lament from the back and it's still alive. You can stealthily circle around her as it tries to find you. Afterwards, all you have to do is stab her again and you have yourself a guaranteed kill. And just like that, you have killed one of the tougher enemies. I can look behind this flaw, as unexperienced players aren't going to be as knowledgeable, nor are they going to be as overpowered when fighting these enemies. And at the very least, it still requires planning from the player to be able to perform these stunts. Which leads us to talk about strategy, an aspect I absolutely adore about this game. Due to Sebastian being kind of weak and resources being fairly low, it pushes players to experiment with every tool at their disposal. The name of the game isn't who has the best aim wins, even though it helps. The best way to get through this nightmare is to make the most resourceful decisions. Get creative, make sure you're doing the most while spending the least. One of the best ways to conserve ammo is by using bottles. As you're exploring, you'll find bottles everywhere. Hell, you might find 100 of them through the course of your playthrough. You can use them as distractions, or you can throw them at enemies' faces to open them up for a free kill. It feels a little clunky at first, and it might take some time to get used to it, but it is absolutely worth it in the long run. I tried to kill everything on sight in my latest run, and I can't count how many times bottles came in clutch in some of the more intense encounters. All the other amazing ways you can approach combat come from the different types of bullseyes provided by the Warden crossbow. This incredible piece of ingenuity allows you to shoot regular bolts from long range, dealing great damage while concealing Sebastian's position. You have explosive bolts that can be shot directly at enemies or be planted as booby traps. The game also gives you many shock bolts that are useful for stunning enemies in place, but most importantly, they are essential for taking out larger groups. And finally, we have smoke bombs, which are about as useful as bringing a knife to a gunfight. Now, this is a point of the video where I have to talk about the glaring issues with The Evil Within 2 that make me no longer want to play it. At the halfway point, you notice the lack of polish certain sections were given, and you notice the repetitive mess this gameplay loop eventually becomes. After defeating a major antagonist, you are introduced to new villains, including new mobs to fight against. These guys are called the Disciples, and they are the first sign that the developers ran out of ideas, because there is quite frankly nothing appealing about these guys. They are insufferably gimmicky, as their unique quirk is to light up in flames every once and again, just to fuck with the player. You'll try to sneak behind them for a stealth kill right before getting screwed over by this stupid gimmick. And it doesn't help that they feel horrible to fight with firearms, as their charge attacks do not complement Sebastian's more limited movement. And it is explicitly clear when you are forced to fight them up close in the final chapters. They simply fail at being balanced for the game's combat. This leads me to talk about the jankiness of this game, which is arguably its worst aspect. First off, what the hell is this zoom when you aim with pistols? Your line of sight is so restricted that you can't even see what's going on around you. Plus, with how aggressive enemies are, aiming with a pistol is a thin line between barely making it by to getting you killed outright. There's no need to zoom in this much in an action-oriented horror game, dude. But for some reason, this does not apply to aiming with the crossbow. Why couldn't they design the camera the same way for every weapon? It would be infinitely times better by default. I've also had many instances where I was running away from a monster and keeping track of it with the camera, right before Sebastian encountered a ledge that he automatically climbs over. It's gotten me hit so many times it's not even funny. And as you might have noticed in the B-roll footage I've been presenting, that Sebastian can often move unnaturally. This might be because of low budget reasons, but it still diminishes the overall game's quality for me personally. Next, I want to talk about boss fights. So, if you still want to avoid spoilers, this is your sign to exit the video. Even though some bosses were fine, others were either straight up pathetic or way too tanky. Let's start with Stefano, as he's my favorite boss in this game. He has a strong artistic personality that is not only memorable, but is also carried through some of the levels and enemy designs. And the fight builds up through the first half as you find him stalking your daughter and taunting you throughout the game. This motivates us to want to kill him, and he puts up quite a fight. He teleports a lot, throws knives at you, plants explosives all over the arena, and has this panic-inducing grab that catches me off guard every time. He's not the greatest boss ever made by any means, but at least he's memorable. Then you have other boss fights like Liam O'Neill that is just frustrating. In this fight, you have to extinguish the flames, as they can either block your path or box you in inside with them. I thought this was a great idea at first. However, O'Neill has way too much health, and he does not compensate it with any interesting attacks that make you strategize in a different way. He is simply another enemy with a gigantic health pool. And I felt more like I wasted my time with him instead of actually enjoying the fight itself. And the rest of the bosses are unfortunately not difficult at all. You get to fight the bosses from the older games, which is great for fan service, but we're just recycling bosses and adding nothing new to them. It's really disappointing. I will admit, the last two bosses look incredible, but I don't think they were mechanically interesting, nor did I think they were fun to fight. After 12 hours of total playtime, the game has completely juiced out all of its replayability for me. It's a game that presents itself as a unique survival horror experience at the start, and then shatters all its promises by the halfway point. As for the story, I think it is fine. I of course can't make compelling arguments surrounding the narrative, since I was never a fan of the original and I know very little of it. However, to me, the game does a solid job at getting you invested in its characters such as Sebastian and Julie Kidman, who begin to relate to each other through cutscenes and through the photographic slides you find in the world. And by the end, you can tell that the devs made sure to conclude Sebastian's story the best way they could, while opening doors for future installments. And they did all of this while maintaining its cheeky humor, which I appreciate a lot.
Sebastian, what are you doing here? I'm in the middle of some serious shit right now, O'Neill. I could use some help out there.
No way.
Are you kidding? Do you know how long it took me to come back here to talk to you about this?
You could have just called, you know?
Are you coming with me or not?
I told you I wasn't going to leave this place. It's fucking evil out there.
That may be, but there's evil within, too.
That was my review of The Evil Within 2. Like I said, it is almost great. It does survival horror extremely well as it trusts players to experiment and it incentivizes them with barely any effort, which is very impressive. However, the lack of polish in the second half of the runtime, combined with its overwhelming amount of jankiness, I just can't put this game above a 6 out of 10. If you've enjoyed this video, please make sure to like and subscribe as it would help out the channel. Also make sure to click notifications on if you don't want to miss more content like this. And now, with that being said, see you guys later.